Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it's Friday. Yeah, you know what that means. It's Friday, then Saturday, Sunday. What? Well, we're here. I got Ron Johnson, myself. We got Sam Ekstrom, the producer who does it all. We got Reggie Wilson from Care 11. We got Julia Daniels. I mean, she's just taking a media tour around Minnesota. I mean, she's everywhere. If you've seen her on the radio, you've heard her on the radio, you've seen her on TV, and she's blessing us today with her presence. That's Julia Daniels on Twitter for those looking. And I'm Ron Johnson again, and this is the Roundtable. We're going to share a bunch of topics today, people. It's going to be a great show, fast-paced, electric. We want to thank the everydayers as well. Thank you guys always for joining us, downloading, watching on YouTube, sharing, tweeting, interacting with us. We're very thankful for that. And for those who don't know, there's going to be some weird references today. You might want to Google some of them because we go old school. Because Justin Timberlake, we know there's a correlation between him and Kirk Cousins. We'll talk about that. But we got to get locked in on this show. So before we get locked in on this show, people, what you got for us, Sam?
Is Kirk gone? That's the question. That's all there is. Is he gone? Is he staying? This is the final weekend. We've reached the decision point.
Or is he dating Jessica Biel? I don't know. We'll see. Reggie.
I'm still stuck on. I got myself, Ron Johnson. But anyway, Cat, brutal time for the injury that he's suffered, but he's taking the route of trying to get back as soon as he can. We'll talk about it.
And there's something going on just a few blocks from here downtown. Have you guys heard of the Big Ten women's basketball tournament? Or
What?
Isn't there a girl named Caitlin Clark playing? We're going to talk about it. Don't worry, guys. We'll clear up all the confusion.
And for those that haven't seen it, Anthony Edwards hit his head on the rim. Now, people joke about that sometimes, like hit your head on the goalpost when you're running the deep route. And Edwards really hit his head on the rim. We'll talk about that, his impact. And there was a question on the post-game show about NBA MVP. And between Shaq, Charles Barkley, and Kenny Smith, there was some Anthony Edwards conversation happened. So we'll talk about that. Should Ant be MVP? I'll let you know what they thought, and then we'll get the panel's thoughts on that. We got that and much more coming up. And yeah, like Mike Epps would say, players mess up too. Players mess up too. Reggie, you know that. I messed up. Yep. Players mess up too. But hey, it's me, Ron Johnson. I'm speaking in third person today. I'm like Antonio Brown without the craziness. But today's episode, I want everybody to know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. That's $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. I'm jumping on a plane today. After the show, I can't wait. I'm going to Colorado. So you know what that means? I get to lay a little wager down. I'm betting on the Timberwolves. I'm telling you that now. I told y'all. $5 bet on the Timberwolves. I don't know which games, but find the easy ones. The Rockets, there's some easy ones coming up. They beat the Pacers, though. I wasn't expecting that one, but I'm glad. So because my 20 games, if you guys remember on the basketball party, I had them losing to the Pacers. So they won that one, but they did it without Karl-Anthony Towns. We'll see. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next. So let's jump into the show. Sam, take it away. I was going to do the Justin Timberlake for everybody to understand. There's some things happening in the world with music. You can't really put certain music on apps, podcasts, because they're protected and we're not paying royalties. But for those that don't remember, Julia, you're too young to remember this. NSYNC, Reggie knows it was a banger. NSYNC had a song called Gone, led by Justin Timberlake. And it reminds me of Kevin O'Connell singing to Kirk Cousins. Like he's trying to be a man and be a coach. And he just wants to touch his face. But he's gone. Gone. Yeah, I don't have the Timberlake vocals, but Sam.
The range though, Ron, you can get up there, man. A little falsetto. I love it.
That was another song that I loved. Oh, you know that one too, Reggie. In my falsetto. Ooh, baby. See, Sam, I got it. Sam, I'm gonna help your iPod out, Sam. We're gonna get you some songs for you when the kids go to bed. Just put these on softly on your phone. Your wife would be very surprised. Like, whoa, where'd that come from? You got Gone. You got falsetto. I got some more for you, Sam, but take it away. What you got?
Yeah, I've still just got that free U2 album on my iPhone. That's all I got music-wise. Kirk Cousins, by I think officially Wednesday is the deadline, but the tampering period opens on Monday. So really Monday is kind of the deadline for the Vikings to get something done with Kirk Cousins. here's my opinion as of this moment, and I could be made to look foolish by the end of the day if they extend Kirk Cousins. I think this whole thing is turning into a charade. I'm not sure the Vikings really wanted Kirk back as badly as they've expressed, and I'm not sure Kirk has wanted to make things work in Minnesota as he might have expressed. I think that he's laid the groundwork for this departure. I think that he's been very clear that he was going to test the market all along. I think the Vikings have been pretty clear with their boundaries. They didn't extend Kirk last year off of a 13-4 season. So what makes us think they're going to extend him with what he wants off of an Achilles injury? I don't think common ground is going to be reached. And I think at this point, I think he is gone. I think he is Justin Timberlaking. And this is it. This is the final weekend of Kirk Cousins under contract as a Minnesota Viking, because I keep seeing the figures going up, the guarantees going up, maybe even a third year on this next contract. And the Vikings, I think, have strict principles when it comes to negotiating with veterans, even a veteran quarterback. I don't think they're going to give him the money. And you know what? I think Kirk knows that. And I think Kirk has moved on. I think it's over. I am already mentally moved on from the Kirk Cousins era, and I'm thinking about what's next. I'm curious what you guys think.
Reggie.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was watching a snippet of The Right Time with Bomani Jones yesterday, and he had El Duncan on, and he was talking about how it just makes so much sense for Kirk Cousins to go to the Falcons, and it would be the most Falconed thing to ever Falcon, because El Duncan basically said it's like Matt Ryan all over again. And they are going to be set up to do some falconing, when it comes to them possibly making the postseason and having heartbreak, because that's just what happens in Atlanta with the Falcons. And so I'm interested to see, if this is the end of Kirk Cousins, like what does that mean for the Vikings? Like what are they doing moving forward? I had an interesting tweet that it got so much that I was overwhelmed and didn't respond back to anybody. Sorry about that, guys. But I posed the question, what if the Vikings signed Russell Wilson to the vet minimum and then, drafted a QB of the future and then had the money to sign some free agents on defense and extend Justin Jefferson? Like, would that work? And man, Russell Wilson is such a polarizing topic. And it's so interesting because, we got reports yesterday that Russ is going to meet with the Steelers. Just got a report this morning that before his meeting with the Steelers, he had exploratory talks with the New York Giants. So obviously there is a market out there for Russell Wilson. So if the Vikings are interested, they probably need to jump on it. And it's probably going to take a little bit more than the vet minimum to sign him, even though the Broncos are going to be on the hook for a lot of the money. But I'm interested to see, like, if this thing is really going to Splitsville with Kirk Cousins, what is the Vikings' plan? I ran into Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi at the airport on Sunday coming back from the combine. They thought I was like stalking them, I think, but I was just coming back from a trip too, bro. Anyway, I was looking at, like, Kwesi looked exhausted. I think he has his hands full right now. And everybody's just like, oh, the Vikings have a plan. They know what they're doing. And I don't know. I'm sure they do. But I think it's probably layered. It's probably multifaceted with, like, okay, if this breaks this way, then this is going to happen. But like with the salary cap situation that they have, in addition to the fact that regardless of Kirk Cousins being on the roster, they're still going to be on the hook for about $29 million in dead cap anyway. Like, there are some limitations, and I just don't know that signing Kirk Cousins to a long-term big money contract is helpful for them as they are continuing to try to build the roster.
Julia.
Yeah, I think Atlanta's what everyone's thinking right now. Diana Rossini at the Combine said in her reports that Atlanta is pretty positive they want Kirk Cousins. I think Arthur Blank's desperate to win. postseason games right now. And I think that they have faith in what he can do with the young weapons that they have on their team offensively as well. I also think it's interesting to see all of the reports that he's house hunting in Atlanta already. I don't believe any of that yet. I think it's too early for rumors like that to come out. We'll see, this week if anything else comes out. But with Julie being from there, she's an Alpharetta girl, and having family there and things like that, there's no need for the cat to get out of the bag. They're not asking strangers for help in the move, I feel like, in this case. But I would agree with both of you guys in saying I think Atlanta is targeting Kirk Cousins as their top pick to be their starting quarterback this upcoming season. And I think that they think he'll fit well into their offense with Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson as well. And they're both familiar with Kirk Cousins too, so it's a good fit. But as much as I hate to say it, because Kirk's a fun guy to cover. The past 2 seasons have been fun. He keeps it interesting. I always root for chaos too. So to see him go somewhere else and then have the big question mark of who the Vikings got this year should be interesting. But yeah, I agree with you guys. I think Kirk's going to Atlanta.
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna be quick on this one. This is tough for me. Everybody knows I'm a Kirk Cousins supporter. I support Kirk Cousins. I think he does a great job. I think he was held back a little bit, and then we saw him flourish under Kevin O'Connell. This season probably would have been one of his most historic seasons if he had not torn his Achilles. I mean, the pace he was heading on, he probably wouldn't have got Justin Jefferson hurt. So it would have been a totally different mindset of a season when you think about the offensive line. Finally, it started coming together. Kevin O'Connell on the schedule was it was coming together the way we this is the time when they can take over and really, make some headway into the playoffs. And it just didn't work out. And so coming off of injury is always the toughest. And I think that's what people this is going to be the biggest deciding factors is injury. And I think that's what the Vikings are. It's like, how quick do you think you'll be back? Can we go into this season with you maybe not playing until week 1, literally, or later? And that's all the things that are on their mind, where they're like, well, we can get a JJ McCaffrey, who now has dropped to the 4th quarterback and then 54th overall is kind of quote unquote. But that means absolutely nothing, because it's all about what the teams draft in front of them and who wants what and who jumps to go get a guy. But at the end of the day, the Vikings do have a tough decision to make. Justin Jefferson's still out there, Danielle Hunter's still out there, and Kirk Cousins all kind of need contracts. And so if you're playing the best 2 out of 3, you're probably going defense and then Justin Jefferson. But that's up to the Vikings. And I do know they want Kirk Cousins, but it does feel like a weird song and dance. It feels like we've been here before. Kirk Cousins committed to the Jets and then all of a sudden was a Viking. So even though he might be entertaining the Falcons, we know Kirk Cousins has no problem changing his mind. And so all the other stuff people are saying, I think people are just throwing stuff out there so they sound right. At the end of the day, nobody knows. Nobody knows besides Kirk Cousins and his agent. The 2 teams don't even know, because Kirk Cousins is not going to tell them. He wants whoever wants him to make the best offer possible. And that's where he's at. He's earned it. Clearly there's a market for him out there, because there's a lot of teams that have been terrible with their quarterback situation. So for me, I don't know if he's gone. I don't know if he's Timberlaking the bit. I don't know if he's even hanging out with Jessica Biel. Like he's not even close to Timberlake, in my opinion. I think he's here. I just think it's going to be who's willing to break first, who's willing to give up. Like I saw Ryan Clark just post this about his negotiation of his contract, and that he didn't care about being loved. He wanted to be respected. And I think that's kind of the thing. And I'm a big 50 Cent fan. I watch all his shows, Power, Raising Canaan. And that was one thing he talked about in the game. Do you want to be feared or do you want to be respected? And young 50 Cent, I think he was 18 or 19 in the show. He's like, it isn't the same thing. Like, you can respect me, and if you fear me, you should respect me. And I think there's a thing to that. And then Kirk Cousins is not the fear respect. It's more of, do you love me and respect me? I think if you respect me, you're going to have love for me. You don't have to be in love with me. And I think that's where Kirk Cousins is always going to stand. I don't know if anybody's ever going to fall in love with Kirk Cousins, but I do know they respect his game. And so that's where it comes out to the Vikings. But speaking of that, Kirk Cousins moving on, if he does, or if he stays, How active, really quick, how active should the Vikings be in free agency right now with a quarterback? Let's just we'll do one position because we could do DB, we could do D-line, but let's stick with the quarterback. If they feel like Kirk Cousins next Wednesday is gone, how active should they be in free agency for a quarterback, or should they rely on the draft? I'll start with you, Julia.
I'm sticking with my take that I think Kirk's out of here. So there's quite a few on the market. Ryan Tannehill. We'll see if Baker sticks with the Bucs. I feel like, yes, he will. I think it would be so interesting to have Baker Mayfield here. But I think my prediction right now, and again, this is the time of year where you don't know what's going on with the draft and things like that. But I think it'd be interesting to have, like what we've talked about before, getting one of these veteran quarterbacks in out of free agency, and then having drafted a quarterback, keep the vet around for a year or two, and then have them train up under the complex, so we've heard, offense that Kevin O'Connell has, and we'll see how that works out. I know we're supposed to talk about quarterbacks, but I want to talk about some other holes that probably need to be filled. I think the D-line has some issues that have to be fixed. I think Christian Wilkins is a free agent out of Miami that could be a good pickup for the Vikings this season, and he has experience with flow because memory serves me correctly. Christian Wilkins was a Clemson guy.
He did the splits at the national championship game.
Yes.
Doing too much.
So he was the Dolphins' first round draft pick, right? When Flo was head coach, I believe, and so there's some familiarity there. So could be a potential good pickup. I think. Maybe they should take a look at the run game because we don't really know when it comes to Cam Akers, and Ty Chandler is just so small. So those are some things to look at too. But when it comes to the quarterback position, like you asked, I think the best case scenario would be picking up a vet like Tannehill or somebody like that, and then having a rookie quarterback underneath him for a year or two.
Yeah, and Christian Wilkins he's been with the Dolphins all 5 years. Flo did draft him in 2019. The one thing to remember about him, he might not be cheap. And so that's where that defense has got to figure it out too. Because, I mean, I see a lot of people saying that too. Like there's all kinds of names being thrown out there, L'Jarius Sneed. And I'm like, we can't afford some of those guys. Like we got to be a little bit more realistic. Because, yeah, if you had an unlimited account, I would for sure. Christian Wilkins, when you think about the 3-4, a true 3-4, he's kind of the guy you want. He's a big body. He's a two-gapper. He's a cock nose. Like he can do it all. And so, yeah, but, and then again, maybe it's him and not Danielle Hunter, and you draft an outside linebacker because we already talked about that. Out of Alabama, there's some guys. I mean, Florida State has a true outside rush in. So, yeah, there's a lot you can do there. Reggie, when you look at quarterback, and then also free agency too, because, yeah, if you have any takes on that. But
it's crazy because, like, I feel like the average age of the guys who are available is like 33, 34. Like, I'm looking at Ryan Tannehill is 36. Russ is 35. Baker's the youngest one on here. Well, one of the youngest ones on here at 28, but, Kirk Cousins is 35. I think about, what we saw in Indy last year. Gardner Minshew is available. That could be a stopgap option for the Vikings. And we saw, Gardner Minshew, a little bit of a gunslinger, so he will throw some interceptions. He'll make some mistakes, but I think we saw enough from Kevin O'Connell's coaching last year with the quarterback carousel that he had to know that, like, oh, they can make something happen. Then Julia's favorite, a wild card out here, Jameis Winston. We saw him in the building against the Vikings, almost bringing the Saints back in that game that they played. So there's some guys out there. I don't think any of them, Jacoby Brissett, like I don't think any of them really just inspire you too much. Like I said, I put the tweet out about Russ. I'm like slowly but surely kind of convincing myself that could be beneficial for the Vikings, but if not, I think Ryan Tannehill is like a poor man Kirk Cousins. I think if you really kind of want to try something, you'd see, what it looks like to maybe take a flyer on Gardner Minshew.
I've got a hot take. Prepare yourself. If Kirk Cousins is gone, don't sign another quarterback. You know why? Because you've got 2 of them. And the quarterback that you sign is not going to be your long-term option. So why even mess with it? Let Nick Mullins and Jaren Hall stay on the roster. Let them have a little competition, which may or may not mean anything because you're going to have a rookie quarterback in here. I want that rookie to have his eyes on starting week 1 right after the draft. I want the Vikings to empower him. I want them to make him the guy. I don't want them to waste another cent at the quarterback position. If Nick Mullins has to be trotted out for 6 weeks just as sort of an on-ramp for the rookie to learn a little bit from the bench, that's fine. I would rather not pay an exorbitant 1-year loaner salary for some guy to come here and try to rehabilitate his stock. I would much rather just take our lumps. I don't think the Vikings are going to be a Super Bowl contender anyway in this transition year. So why not just pour all your eggs into the rookie quarterback basket and don't even touch quarterback in free agency. Instead, go spend your money on defense. Go get Bryce Huff from the Jets. That's my favorite free agency target. Get some edge rushing help in here and spend your money that way. Don't bring in Russell Wilson, please.
Wow. Well, I mean, I get that too. The Russell Wilson thing for me, if we can get guaranteed Seahawks Russ where we were letting Russ cook, I'm fine with that. Now this Russ is more vegan. Nothing against vegans. You guys are great people. But it's to the taste. Like, it's not for everybody. And Russ is not for everybody right now. Like, he's kind of in his own world. Maybe very healthy, maybe very positive. Because you vegans, you're healthy, positive, right? But does it work? Does it work for everybody? And it doesn't. And that's why I'm worried about the Russell Wilson bit. I do like Tannehill. I know Julia threw that name out. I like Ryan Tannehill for the simple fact of his size and his ability to run. I mean, he's not as fast as he used to be, but he can run and he does have size. When you think about being able to place balls, if they do draft a guy like Braylon Allen or Bucky Irvin and they try to get a true running back, Braylon Allen is a true running back to get in here too with a rookie quarterback that you can rely on to carry the ball 25 times and then have Ty Chandler come in as running back too. So that's another one that we could see late round guy ended up being the starter because it's not always about the first round. Whereas sometimes in the first round, you maybe go out and get an edge rusher and maybe this whole draft is somewhere nice. Maybe they go get a cornerback and we're all like thinking this and they're like, we're going to draft a corner in the first round and really just get a Deion Sanders lockdown guy, Trayvon Diggs type. But we'll see. I don't know if there's one in the draft. I haven't really looked at the corners too tight, but it doesn't feel like anybody jumps out there that they're worthy of that pick. But again, I'm not a scout. I'm not sitting here watching these guys tape every day. So they have a different idea. But we got to talk about Karl-Anthony Towns and these Timberwolves. They are on fire right now. There's a lot of consternation across the world about who should be MVP in the NBA. Not giving Ant a lot of credit, but there was a quote. I think it was Charles Barkley. It was a quote I'm going to read to you guys when we come back, and we'll talk about that. Charles Barkley's thoughts on Ant as MVP, and then Shaq Hayton. And so we'll talk about who do we side with a little bit more. But we'll do all that after a word from our sponsors.
Brought to you today by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Ron Johnson's going to be locked in when he goes to Colorado. If you're a new customer, you can get $150 in bonus bets with a winning $5 bet. Wolves play the Cavs tonight. They don't have Cat. The Cavs don't have Donovan Mitchell. See if you can get that 150 courtesy of the Wolves tonight on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. And when you've got that 150 in your bank, you can put it on a parlay, a live same-game parlay pluses, exclusive props, futures, point totals, rebound totals, assist totals, so much more. FanDuel.com/locked-on, the website to visit, FanDuel.com/locked-on. Shoot your shot at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Well, we got to talk a little bit about Karl-Anthony Towns. So, you know what, Reggie, take it away.
Yeah, so it was a weird escalation. We saw, what was that, on Wednesday night, we get the report. Oh, Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be out against the Pacers because of left knee soreness. And you're like, oh, well, that's interesting. Okay, well, fine. Then we wake up yesterday morning to Shams and his report. Karl-Anthony Towns has the torn left meniscus. You're like, what? And now, you're going through all these different treatment options and recovery timelines. Just not the most ideal situation for the top team in the West fighting to hold on to that top spot. And now, the Wolves, earlier before the game, Chris Finch didn't want to give too much information. So he was like, oh, nothing's changed. Just no status update. He's out tonight against the Pacers. That's what we got. And then after the game, that's when we get the confirmation. Torn left knee lateral meniscus. And what's interesting is Cat decided, instead of having the full repair, which would probably be like a 4 to 8 month recovery timeline, he decided to get the trim surgery next week to trim the meniscus, which allows him to come back sooner, but it also has a longer term effect on the knee. So it's interesting. I think what Cat sees is the Wolves' window to do this thing. They're in arguably one of the best seasons that they've ever had. He wants to get back. And with this particular meniscus surgery that he's opting for, it allows him to possibly make it back. He's going to get reevaluated in 4 weeks, but it allows him to possibly make it back by the playoffs. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the Wolves kind of transition with him. And I know we'll kind of get into that, but it's crazy to see. Last year he missed 50 plus games with that injury, and he had been so dependable and so healthy this year. Not even really sure when that happened with the knee. It was no like moment in the last game where we're like, oh man, what happened to Cat there? Like it's really interesting that this thing popped up. Not really getting a whole lot of details from the Wolves. Did it happen in practice maybe? Or, not really sure what's going on with that. But Cat is out for the foreseeable future, going to get that meniscus surgery next week. And that's a big implication on the Wolves as they are trying to solidify and continue to keep that top spot in the West.
Sam.
Yeah, so I talked about this on Wednesday in the Minnesota basketball party, and this is what scares me. The West is loaded. We know this. 1 through 10 is tough. The play-in teams are tough. You got the Lakers, the Warriors, the Kings, the Mavs. But look at all these teams. They're all loaded and healthy. You can't think of really a major injury in this conference right now. Like Russell Westbrook is probably the most high-profile player with an injury. All these teams are healthy. And now the Wolves have lost one of their stars. That puts them behind the 8 ball. Typically in an NBA season, there's enough attrition where there's a couple top teams that might be shorthanded. That hasn't happened or is not happening right now. So if the Wolves go into the playoffs a man down, I mean, that's going to be tough for them to win rounds if everyone else they're playing is healthy. Now it looks like this timeline is favorable for Cat to at least get back. And what I'm banking on, last year when Cat came back from a 50-plus game absence, Cat looked pretty engaged right away. I mean, when he was back on the court, he was there. He was doing stuff. He was scoring. It didn't take him too much acclimation to have an impact after missing months. So we're talking about a shorter time now this year that he'll miss. Even if it's 8 weeks, he's probably back in the first round of the playoffs. And if he can have an impact right away, that's fantastic. Now, in the meantime, I feel pretty good about Naz Reid. I think it hurts your bench depth when you don't have Naz coming off the bench, but I still like their starting 5. I think they can still win a lot of games. But this felt like this was coming, didn't it? The injury scares have been plentiful. You had Rudy with an ankle. You had Anderson with a knee. You had Ant go down one game. Everybody turned out to be okay, but it just felt like this was building. Something was going to happen, and it's very unfortunate that this came up right now.
I think I just feel for Minnesota fans because, of course, right? Of course this happens. It's kind of out of the blue, it feels like, because we didn't see him go down at any point, and we're like, oh no, we just get this report and everyone's confused as to what's going on. I think it also speaks to, Cat, obviously a part of the team, knows this team better than we do from the outside. It speaks to his confidence that he has in what this team is capable of, the fact that he opted for the shorter recovery time with potential long-term downfalls that come with what he's chosen to do. I think, like you said, Sam, Nas, confidence in Nas, but he really does. I mean, this is a huge hole to fill, right? And that's big shoes to try and fill with Cat out. But we talked about the depth that this team has this year and how they're kind of firing on all cylinders. It sucks, but you're right in saying him missing all that time last year and then coming out and just having basically a heater for the rest of the season, it feels like. We can expect good things from him when he does come back, if it's when the postseason starts up, which would be, perfect timing. I also think, Cat was not the star. He's not the star of the season for the Wolves either, though, too. Ant has been the guy this year in particular. And for, I would argue, the beginning the first half of the season or so, Cat was not the guy we were talking about. There were a lot of games where we were talking about Nas over anybody else. And obviously, with what we saw from Ant last night alone, tells us enough. But I think it sucks. Obviously, this sucks for Wolves fans. It sucks for Minnesotan fans because, of course. But I think that there is still faith to be had. I don't think it's game over just because Cat got hurt. I think it's easy to try and jump to that conclusion, but there's so much depth on this team, and there are so many stars on this team that are good at different particular things that I think it's not the end of the world for the Wolves. And they can keep their hopes alive for sure, but it is going to be tough, no doubt.
Yeah, for me, I just think it's bad luck. We can say curse, we can say whatever we want. It's just bad luck. Like it's tough. This is part of sports. We get it. Everybody's sentiments, I think, are right out of the blue. Like it was super random. It was never like, oh, he's down with left knee soreness. Oh, he's kind of feeling like it was just like nothing, basketball. Boom, all-star game. Shoot the 3-pointers. Oh wait, Carl's out with a meniscus. Wait, what? And so it's just one of those things where you don't really see a play specifically happen. Nobody's like pointing to us, but maybe it's something that's been ongoing and he tried to play through it. Cause I know I played with a meniscus that was partially torn for about 9 weeks in football. So I know you can play on it. So maybe this is something that has been going on for a while. If it was, and this is where I go with it, I have a different take. If this was something that has been lingering and he's been trying to play through it, this was the dumbest decision ever to play through it up until this point. He should have done it well before. Now, again, I don't know when it happened, but if it happened before the All-Star break, this should have been done before the All-Star break to give yourself that month. Because I think you can come back. Like I came back in about 6 weeks. So you can come back in about 5 to 6 weeks. Now, are you perfect? No, but you're better. And you don't have that pain. It's nothing pulling and ripping and tearing as you bend your knee. But I hope that's not the case. I hope this was like randomly just happened in practice because it can happen at any point. And they're just trying to keep it under wraps of how it happened. Maybe we'll hear it later on the podcast when Karl-Anthony Towns gets on the podcast when the season's over and talks about how I told y'all we were better than the Nuggets because we did this in 4 weeks and they did this in 4 years. But we're never going to, or Pat Beverly might get it out of Cat and he'll tell him the truth. But who knows? We don't know when this happened, how it happened, but it is just flat out bad luck. But speaking of this, bad luck happens. Let's move on. Anthony Edwards, the greatest play I've ever seen as far as the end of the game. Now, it's up there with the Michael Jordans. It's up there with the Tracy McGrady scoring. What did he score? Like 11 points in 10 seconds or some crap like that, or 12. It was like a ridiculous amount. It was like 30 seconds, and he scored like 11 points or something. But that block. That goes up there with LeBron. Now, again, the moment's not the same because LeBron's moment of his block against the Pacers, bar none. But Anthony Edwards' block. Now, I want to go to the quote. Charles Barkley said that if the Wolves remain number one heading into the playoffs, with Karl-Anthony Towns out for 20 plus games, maybe even the first round of the playoffs he's out, and they win the first round of the playoffs. Before that happens, though, I think when does the MVP voting start? Does it start as soon as the season ends, or is it?
Yeah, it's a regular season award.
Got it. So the playoffs don't matter. But this is Barkley's thought, though, with the whole playoffs, too. He kind of threw that out there. But if they start the playoffs, he said, number one, and he goes 20 games without Cat, he said Anthony Edwards should be the MVP, period. Now, Shaq, of course, hating, saying, what about Jokers, though? They only got a half game up, and you're going to say they first place? So so all this half place or half game, first place, blah, blah, he's throwing that in there. But at the end of the day, it's a first place team being carried by Anthony Edwards. They said Jason Tatum. I like that one as well. But again, people are going to hate on the Celtics. They did blow it against the Nuggets. They had a lead and they blew it in the end. You blew it. But should Anthony Edwards, one, let's talk about that game, ridiculous. But two, if they're number one and he's does all this without Cat, should he be the MVP of the NBA? I say yes, but I'll start with you on this, Reggie.
Yeah. I think that was the same question I posed in the sports office last night. If Ant somehow just goes off and continues to score 35, 40-point games moving forward without Cat, and he's really just putting the team on his back, yes, give him the MVP. His numbers are already solid. But, we kind of talked about this. He's not in that 30-plus point range like some of the other scorers in the league, and this league has become more about scoring. So he's like, if you want scoring, I got scoring. The only thing that I kind of worry about with Ant is the reckless abandon that he plays with. Last night, that block was the most incredible block that I've ever seen. And it's funny, Eric Durkee from the Loons, he was like, yeah, if that rim is there, I feel like if the rim is not there, I feel like Ant just continues to just climb into outer space. And it just seems like that because he hit his head on the rim. He's like, yeah, I hurt my head. It hurts a lot right now. And then I don't know if anybody really truly paid attention to the fall. That fall was so nasty when he came down. He immediately grabbed his wrist, but then he got up and, dapped up Rudy, and it was just adrenaline. I thought man, once that adrenaline comes down, he's probably going to be sore in a few places. And we've seen him go down. He went down early yesterday in the game, went to the locker room, came back out. So I think my only issue is the reckless abandon that Ant plays with. I just wonder if he can keep this type of effort and energy up. I know Ron mentioned that dad strength. That is something that you can't overlook. But I think him playing with that reckless abandon like that, that's the only thing that concerns me. But if he continues to play at this level, I think that it was an amazing play for two reasons. One, the block itself was just ridiculous. Okay. But two, if you remember, he missed a free throw at the other end right before that would have made it a 3-point game. So he took it upon himself okay, look, I'm ready for this thing to be over. I'm ready to get out of Indiana. Let's end this right now. And he's like, that's the highest I've ever jumped. And so he redeemed himself for a mistake on the other end by saving the game on the other end. That's just an incredible play. That's what MVPs are made of.
I said a few weeks ago, we were talking about, it might have been last week, about Ant being considered for MVP. I said it's kind of a downfall a little bit for him that he has so many stars on one team. But with Cat going out, could prove beneficial, unfortunately, for Ant in terms of, if he's able to up his point average during games and able to make plays like that because he feels like he has to. I think he's a very motivated guy, and he's one to step up in Cat's absence like this for sure, especially here at the end of the season. But it sounds bad to say, but it could be good for him that Cat's going to miss some time, because then it just gets to be the Anthony Edwards show, should he choose to make it that. So I think there's definitely potential for it, but he's got to continue doing things like what he did last night. But to your point, Reggie, Wolves fans should want him to maybe reel it in a little bit, because getting a little too crazy, he could end up getting very hurt as well.
Yeah, Ant, just keep showing me that. Whatever you just did, do it 19 more times. I needed to see that, honestly, from Ant, because think about the week he had. Now, going to see the birth of his child was fine. Not upset about that. But then he also kind of stunk at the end of the Clippers game, and he was late to the Blazers game. So he better have showed up in the game after you're late for the tip-off. I expected that from Ant, for him to be totally engaged. And maybe maybe Cat being out is sort of the catalyst or the kick in the butt that he needed to get re-engaged. Maybe getting on the road helped him clear his head a little bit. But I think this was a game where he needed to show up, and he knew that. Now keep doing it. This has been the knock on Anthony Edwards. This is why he is 160-1 odds to win the MVP. He has a massive gap to make up because he hasn't been as consistent. There are 8 games this year where he's scored less than 15 points. You know how many times that's happened to Doncic, Tatum, Antetokounmpo, and Shea combined? 3. It happened to Edwards 8. So he does need to be more consistent. But if he does that consistently for 20 games, yeah, I think that gap's going to close pretty quickly for the MVP.
Well, there's a media circus going on in Minneapolis right now, and it's not because of Anthony Edwards' block. It's because of one young lady that we saw Julia Daniels stalk. So Julia, tell us a little bit about the Big Ten championship for the women. And then, what kind of excitement have you seen right away from like Caitlin Clark being on site?
Oh my goodness. First of all, not stalking her. Thank you very much. If anything, Kara Levin is stalking her, not Julia. Just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Yeah, the frenzy is insane. We see it in our own newsroom. We've got people coming up asking us if they should put the chopper up to see where her bus is going, where they're staying. It's madness, actually. I will say, no, they kept it under wraps pretty well yesterday because the crowd was minimal when she walked into Target Center. So what happened was I was going live to preview the Gophers game. They were playing the late game last night. They did end up losing to Michigan. But I was previewing the game. I had a live hit at about 5:02 or something, right after Reggie's hit about Cat. 30 seconds after I send it back to studio, I turn around and I'm kind of taking my IFB out of my ear, and I'm like, why are all of these Iowa fans lined up behind me? And what's going on here? They got their phones out. What's happening? I looked right in front of me because I'm right by the front door, and I see these people, these ladies with matching sweatsuits on with little Hawkeyes on them. And I'm like, oh, okay, I should probably get my phone out. So they had kind of created this boundary, except for because we were live, they didn't make us move. So we were closer, and I just whipped my phone out, and Caitlin Clark walks right in to go watch the games, get a little scouting done before they play today. But the frenzy has been insane. Yeah, I mean, as expected, right? She was in town last week. Was that last week? Yeah, last Wednesday, right? And it was absolute madness. Downtown, there's no parking, so don't come down here and think you're going to park anytime in the next week and a half because you won't find any parking. But rightfully so. The craziness is happening. Iowa plays today. I know a ton of people that the tournament sold out in like record time, 100,000 tickets. A lot of people have tickets just the pass for the entire weekend so that they live here, but they wanted to see her play because they figure she'll make a run. And then next week, obviously, we have the men here. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time they're both playing at Target Center, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that's true.
Huge deal for downtown Minneapolis just in general. But yeah, the men will be here next week for the men's tournament. But it was crazy yesterday, and we'll be covering it all weekend on Care 11. Even though the Gophers are out, we'll still be covering it.
Sam.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how the women's tournament has kind of trump the men's tournament. I mean, it really is. The Caitlin Clark effect is insane. And with men's college basketball going through some weird times right now, lacking star power, I think I saw a stat that women's college basketball has actually averaged more viewership in, I think there was a specific time slot parameter around that. But that's wild to me. Might have been on Fox, where they've featured Caitlin Clark a handful of times. I'm so curious whether that star power effect is going to carry over into the WNBA, where it looks like she's going to be a member of the Indiana Fever. And that's a big basketball state, not known for supporting their WNBA team. Will she be packing WNBA arenas? I hope so. I think that we've had now enough stars going from college basketball to the WNBA where you're now seeing more and more of these type of players that are so fun to watch. And it's I think raising the whole profile of the league. So good for Caitlin Clark and women's Big Ten basketball. It's a draw right now. I would say just as much, if not more, than the men's tournament.
Reginald.
Man, I'm here for all of it. You know, we have been at Care 11 on the Caitlin Clark beat for, I feel like, the last week and a half. And there have been parts of that have been like, all right, we can calm it down. But honestly, like, she is the biggest thing in college basketball right now. And it's so crazy that, you know, with NIL and you know, so the one and done culture of the men's side, that like I can't really even name you too many of the men's basketball players. And like we're gonna get to March Madness, and I feel like it'll be fun, but you know, because March Madness is always fun, but like it's not gonna have that same like effect that it usually does, because it's like we don't really know a lot of these players. We don't really know a lot of these guys. And so, like, I went to Mizzou. I couldn't even name you 5 guys on our team. Our team sucks this year. And so I'm just like here for all of it with Caitlin Clark. It's so cool that she's in our city, that, you know, she's hooping here and, you know, eluding Julia and her annoying camera yesterday, like Loterio at Popeyes. But it's really fun just seeing that she is like this generation's like Steph Curry, pulling up from the logo. She's logo Lillard, you know, just in a woman form. And it's just really cool to see. I'm here for all the hysteria surrounding Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, I'll say really quick before we get out of here. I mean, the big thing about the Big Ten tournament for me is I think everybody said it, but Sam, you're right. There's no men in the Big Ten right now that you're like, oh, I got to see this dude play. Like Purdue is a good team, so we can talk about the team. But there's not really a guy on Purdue. Like before they had like Jay Nivey, and you're like, oh, okay, Jay Nivey's going to be electric today. He's going to do something. You can go to even Duke. Like Duke is so thought about that they're talking about their recruiting class for next year already. Like they are so excited to get this kid from a different country that's 7'2". He said he's going to Duke now. You got Cooper Flagg. I mean, they got four stars, and that's all they're talking about. They're not talking about, and the team's not bad right now. They're actually pretty decent, but they're not talking about it because there's no star. There's no number 1 draft pick. There's no guy that everybody's like, oh, we got to draft this guy. Like if there was any year to not suck in the NBA, this is the one, because there's nobody to really draft 1st or 2nd overall. Like the Pistons are doing it for nothing. They are literally they're getting beat up for no reason. At least if you were getting beat up like the Cavs, you got LeBron, or if you were the Pelicans, you got Zion. There's nothing, or you could get Shaq, or you can get Jordan, or whoever. There's nothing. There's no D Wade. There's not even a Carmelo. And that's what's so frustrating, where like these guys coming out. I mean, they're already talking about Wemby's little 16-year-old brother more than they're talking about the men's college basketball season. So, yes, I think Caitlin Clark is doing something special right now. Let's not forget about Paige Beckers at UConn. I'm excited to see what UConn can do down the stretch as well, because we have to remember she's coming off 2 ACLs. So she's not fully healthy. She's not even into her bag yet because she doesn't probably trust her knee. But the fact that team as well, when she gets going, South Carolina, LSU, like it's way more exciting to watch LSU go against Iowa, or South Carolina go against LSU, or South Carolina. Like Dawn Staley versus Caitlin Clark in that group, like that's what everybody wants to see. Like, what's the Final Four for the women going to be this year? Because the men, it's just not there. There's no excitement. Like, I'm going to do a bracket just because I'm going to do it and I like to bet on it, but I don't even know. I can close my eyes and let my 9-year-old pick these teams for the men because you just don't know. But the women, you're probably going to take Caitlin Clark all the way, LSU all the way, South Carolina all the way, and those probably are your three. The fourth, I'm drawing a blank right now because it could be anybody's game there. Also, LSU could get beat because they've shown it. They don't look great. But Caitlin Clark is doing something special in Minneapolis. I don't know if the men are even going to get half of the coverage. I think the media will cover just because they're supposed to. The only thing that I think personally for me that can make the men's better, Big Ten-wise, is if the Gophers make a run at it. Because if the Gophers make a run at it, at least people will start talking about, like, in their home state, can they win the Big Ten tournament or something like that? Like, it'll create some type of buzz and maybe get a little bit of like, oh, where are they going to go from here? But before we get out of here really quick, the women lost to Michigan. They are probably not going to get a bid. They're going to the NIT maybe. And so I just want everybody to know that too. Stay tuned and make sure you check that out. See if the women get a bid into the WNIT because the tournament's not there. And the same for the men. I think if they don't win a couple games, they're probably not going to the tournament either. It's probably all but lost. But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Ekstrom. That's Julia Daniels. You might have heard on the Power Trip. She's a big deal now. And you got Reggie Wilson from Care 11. I want to thank you guys and have a great day. But remember, 24/7, you can get our YouTube channel. Just subscribe. You just need an email address. It's free, but you can watch us every day, 24/7. You can get all the sports around the clock. That's Vikings, Wild Wolves, Gophers, Caitlin Clark even. Might even have to retweet out some of Julia's videos of stalking the Iowa Hawkeyes. But again, I'm Ron Johnson, and I want you guys to have a great day.